I call the Wynwood City School Board meeting to order, June the 23rd. It's 6:30, 2014. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Smith, District Honors, Recognitions, Gifts, and Introductions.
The district would like to honor Mr. Stephen Kralik, who donated $2,000 for pavement markings on the Winton Woods Elementary School playground. Is he here tonight?
Oh, thank you.
We'll get that information to him.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to jump right to public comments, and we have two of them this evening. Any preference? Mr. Willard?
My name is John Willard. I'm from Green Hills, part of the district here. I'm going to suggest to the board something might be considered radical in the year 2014, but quite frankly was commonplace 50 years ago. I'm going to respectfully suggest that you begin board meetings with a short prayer. Why am I doing that? Earlier this month, the Supreme Court of the United States, after 50 years of bouncing back and forth, by majority decision, has decided, quite properly in my opinion, that it is appropriate for public prayer to be said. It was a very informative decision. It's a matter of public record. You can check the Supreme Court website. I put before you a copy of a prayer quoted in that opinion, and it was first said September 7th, 1774, in the First Continental Congress, before one bit of business was conducted, before any pledge of allegiance was said, prayer was said by a minister before Congress. That's how important they thought it was. I think now that the court has decided we can do that, I think it's appropriate to at least consider it. It's not mandatory, but I think we should consider it. We're trying to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic here, but we also like to teach character. Character is taught by example. I can think of no better example for the board to give to at least open a session with a short prayer. And how you would want to do it, that's entirely up to you. And that's all I have to say on that subject. The only other short comment I want to make is the OJTs. We've all seen them. The Academy of Global Sub-Studies did considerably better than the rest of the population. That was hoped for and is also expected. What does concern me, two areas that cause problems with both the general school population and AGS. Math, which we knew was a problem with, but also social studies. We did a horrible job on social studies. And the numbers given indicate to me it's not necessarily totally a teaching problem. There is a problem there, I feel, with the books and the text being used. For some reason, I haven't checked those books. I understand you're getting some new books. And with the superintendent's permission, sometime in the next few weeks, I'd like to review the sociology books that you're using. I'm no expert in math, but with my background and degrees and experience, I think I have more than the average experience in social studies, history, and civics. And I would like to read that book to see where we are, because too often, and in all fairness, everyone's different. Some of these books are written by academia that are in an ivory tower that they have little relationship or limited relationship to what's really happening on the ground, particularly with the core material that we have to deal with. So that's all I have to say, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willard. Mrs. Willard?
Hi, I'm Maria Walther Willard, and I live in Baylor Road in Green Hills, Ohio. First of all, I want to thank, and I don't know exactly the order of, but I'm going to say Dr. Holden because she was the first one that heard my plead for the Spanish for Hispanics. The Board of Education that I came not maybe one, twice, but 3, 4, 5 times, maybe 6, to suggest that now that we had the Spanish 1 for Hispanics, that we should have Spanish 2 for Hispanics. I would like to also add to that we had a short fuse for that Spanish 2 for Hispanics. Already the registration was finished when it finally got into place. So to prevent that from happening, I'm starting to plead now for the next year for Spanish 3 for Hispanics. I read in the Hilltop Journal, and I'm sorry that I know that Ms. Miranda is here, but Ms. Burns is not. I read in the Hilltop Journal about a Forest Park Council meeting with the Board of Education, and it took place this past Thursday. It was an open meeting. I read it on the paper, and I came in. I know, amazing to the amazement of my husband, who was also there, I did not say a word during the whole meeting. I didn't think it was my place to, because it was designated for, like I said, for Forest Park Council meeting with the Board of Education. I attended the meeting, and there was a very good flow and very interesting ideas, and it was a very healthy give and take between both sides. And to thinking of a problem that we have, that perhaps thinking outside the box might be a way to go with some of the things that I learned at that meeting, was get the community more involved into the education. Also the businesses involved as part of the community and education. And that brings to the point perhaps of the next step, and please follow my train of thought in here, of remediation, because we do have to do remediation for those OGTs before we can do any acceleration. The same thing for the results of the 1/4 of the third graders that did not pass the reading guaranteed. They need to remediate for that. I know that the money is tight, and oftentimes when I suggest for a Saturday school, money becomes an object. Perhaps thinking outside the box, these businesses can have some grants, something in place to have extended contracts for teachers on Saturdays. And or any other teachers from the surrounding areas are qualified to teach those subjects that are causing the problem. Therefore, remediating the student population that is in trouble. 47% of the OGTs were failure, and that brings to the point whether, almost 50%, brings to the point whether or not, again, the books, the curriculum, the material covered, and so forth, was it all in sync here? I know that we have a new person in charge of curriculum, and I really do feel very comfortable with that. I also at this time, I would like to make a couple of suggestions as well. I don't know exactly how in place you have the absenteeism policy or the tardy policy, but students that are absent or tardy and arrive 3 bells late, whatever it is, miss those instruction moments and periods. What are we doing about that? How many tardies are we allowed to do, and how many of those may cause a correlation between the failure on those tests because they missed the material altogether. They weren't there to receive it. Perhaps some investigation together as neighboring districts, that's Butler County, Warren County, that has held traditionally parents accountable for it, as appearance in court as a contributing of delinquency of a minor when the student has not attended so many days of school. Now, having said that, I know that August is around the corner. Community, teacher, parents, administrators, superintendent, and members of the board, we all have to get this job done next year. We need to have, for the results of the OGTs next year, I want to say 90% of passing We need to get together on that. We all shoulder this problem. We all have to come together with that. I also think that perhaps it's time to revise the program that we have in math and think outside the box and not wait for the state to tell us that we need to have a certain degree of proficiency to pass the grade, but to have the same as we have for reading and math exam or testing up to that point, and if not, they may have to repeat that course. Math and, in this case, reading seems to be one of our problems here, 2 of them. So let's not wait until the state tells us that we have the problem, we have to do something about it. Let's be proactive instead of reactive. I would like to finish to say that I feel that we are blessed in this district, that we are still fighting for the academics of every single member of the student body. I feel that we're blessed with a superintendent that seems that that's his whole, the only agenda that he has. He is on the foot, he is on the classroom, he is during the school hours there, he doesn't hold meetings during that time. He is in the field at all times, and I really feel very blessed for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Walther. Board, any comments? Sorry, and I forgot to say that when Mr. Walther was up there as well, so thank you so much. Board, in your packets under item number 5 are approval of minutes. We need a motion.
I'll motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Looks good.
Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicott? Aye. Mr. Cleary?
Aye. Treasurer's report 6.0.
The reports that are before you, I won't say too much about them. You're probably waiting for the end of the year, which will come next month. However, we're still on target with our appropriation savings, and you will see tonight that we're adopting the final appropriations, and there's no change in the general fund or any other local funds.
Okay. So noted, then we'll refer those financial reports off for audit. Mr. Seymour, 7.0.
We had one CD come in redeemed for $250,000, and we can't find any place to send any additional funds out to get decent CDs with banks that we would desire to do business with. So we still have 2 CDs outstanding, but we do have now currently at the end of the month $2 million in the new Star Plus program. So that's the investment report.
Board, we need a motion to approve the treasurer's recommendations for investments.
I move to approve the investments as presented by the treasurer.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicott?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 7.02, final appropriations for 2014.
Before you, you have the final appropriations for the current fiscal year of 2014. General fund, all local funds remain the same throughout the year. The only changes are some slight modifications to state or federal grants. And I would request that you approve the final appropriations for this year.
Board, we need a motion.
I'll move to approve the final appropriations for fiscal year 2014 as presented by the treasurer.
I second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicott?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye.
Next are the temporary appropriations for next year. You're just approving, giving me authorization so that I can make payroll July 15th. Once we have all the budgets, we will be approving the current budget, or as the state refers to, appropriations around in September. This is giving me temporary permission to spend funds.
Board, we need a motion.
I move to approve the temporary appropriation of the fiscal year 2015 as noted.
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 7.04, resolution determining to proceed with the bond issue. Mr. Seymour.
This is your last and final resolution to officially adopt your ballot language for the November bond issue. Just to review, it will be for 8.48 mils. On a $100,000 home, that'll be $296.80. We will be selling bonds equivalent to approximately 110 million, of which the state will be funding 33 million of that. The state is co-funding approximately 96 million of that, with 10 million being totally funded locally. So you're submitting this after your approval to the Board of Elections.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the resolution determining to proceed with the bond issue in November.
I'll second.
Discussion. Mr. Seymour, thank you for putting the calculator together. I know a lot of our constituents out there, they want to really understand the impact based on the validation or the valuation of their home, so that will that'll be very, very helpful. Hopefully maybe we can put that on the website so everybody knows what that cost might be. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 8.0, reports of the superintendent.
Yes, sir. This has been a very, I would say, unusual year. So many different initiatives have been rolled down from the state, and I'll just go over a few. The Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, Common Core, Next Generation Learning Standards, Student Growth Measures, Student Learning Objectives, Third Grade Guarantee. It was difficult to achieve all of these, and so we prioritized, and we put a lot of emphasis on the Third Grade Guarantee, because that's the one that would get our kids to the next level or have them held back. We plan to continue on with the work. It's already in our scope of work for the 14-15 school year. And so it's already set on a calendar and a cycle of how we're going to proceed. And so this report is open for discussion if need be.
I have a question. You're talking about the race to the top minutes.
Yes, sir.
Specifically, I was more than a little. I was concerned about the attendance that's reflected in the minutes there. Less than half of the members showed up for the final meeting. And as you were just recounting, the difficulty of getting through all those big heavyweight issues that left some work. And so the final sentence, as teams of teachers may be designated to complete the work during the summer months. And we're at the end of June. Is that what you mean by the future work plan?
Yes, the work is already in progress. So it will be done and ready to roll out before the beginning of the school year.
Oh, good.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
We were very diligent about it. Even though the state came with a lot of mandates, those mandates affect our children. And so we could not just say we were going to wait until September or October. That's too late. So we're putting them into play now.
Is that unusual that we have that expectation of our staff
It's not.
over the summer? Is this different this year?
This is different. I think the unusual piece is it's the large number of things that are coming out, but we did not want to hide behind the fact that it's a lot. We're just coming up for the challenge to say we'll have to get it done. Yeah, it is unusual to do that scope of work in the summer, but there's no other way. And it seems like when I asked people to get it ready and prepared to work on it, no one objected, at least not in front of me.
Well, I know they're not all here, but thank you to the staff that committed
Absolutely.
to working this summer and doing that, having it ready right out of the chute. So thank you to the staff that volunteered to do that or were appointed to do it. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
8.02,
As mandated by Senate Bill 210, beginning July 2011, all schools must meet certain nutrition standards on all a la carte foods sold during the school day. This impacts the child nutrition department as well as all vending in any school stores. We're pleased to report that the child nutrition department has continued to meet these guidelines this school year. All of the a la carte snacks sold in the lunchrooms meet the Alliance of Healthier Generation guidelines, and per board policy, all beverages meet Senate Bill 210. School principals are responsible for overseeing vending machines, school stores, and their respective buildings. Our principals are pleased to report that their schools are also in compliance.
Board, any questions for Mr. Seymour? Or Mr. Smith?
What a compliment.
I just have a question. What do they do to make sure they're in compliance? Is there a certain day that they walk through and do a check randomly, or how is it that,
Well,
yeah,
excellent question, Dr. Johnson.
how do we know we're in compliance?
I think there are two parts to it. Number one is what's being offered in the vending machines really sets the stage for that. They are not the nutrition police, but they are accountable for what's coming out of the machine. So if we put healthier things in, we can only get healthy things out. All right. Thank you.
All right.
I'll remember that.
You know, I did notice that the staff has kind of taken that to heart as well, you know, from being in some of the teachers' lounges, being here, seeing that our health insurance company partnered with us this year to have fresh fruit available for teachers and staff. That's just kind of reconfirming we're moving in the right direction. So I know Mr. Seymour was involved with that somehow, but at least I think you were.
Actually, Leanne Montgomery is the spearheader of all the wellness.
Okay. Well, thank you to Leanne in that case.
Mr. Davis.
8.03 preliminary OAA OGT test results.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Board. Good evening. I'll be presenting some preliminary information on the Ohio graduation test for this spring, as well as the third grade results from the OAA. You recall the polar vortex that pushed the testing cycle back a week. The state allowed districts around the state to basically have an extra week to get all that done. As a result, the scoring got shifted back, but they couldn't wait on third grade guarantee because it's so critical. Kids are in summer school, there's deadlines for families, and families need to know information about their child and where they're going to be next year. So third grade did come in, and if I could, I'd like to begin with that. So you should have received in your board doc packets, packet documents about third grade that look like this. And if I could just direct you to, we have reading and we have math. Of course, we have fall as well as spring to report for third grade because the state does administer both of those assessments in the third grade year. And after that, you'll actually see a graph, which is, I think this picture says 1,000 words. So you'll see something like this. And you can see the pass rate information before you for fall and then for spring. And you can see an increase in the pass rate of approximately 14 percentage points. Am I doing my math right? 25 percentage points, excuse me. But this one, I think, is probably tells a better picture. This is where we were in the fall, the green, and then you can see where the bars migrate to the right into the yellow. So, for example, of the 260 third graders tested, 106 of them fell into the limited range at the beginning of the year. We firmly believe that in helping students achieve their potential, what you have to do is help students grow. Kids come to us where they come to us. Our job is to maximize their time while they're in school and help them reach the next level. So I'm pleased with the shape that I see in the data, that although it's not where we would like it to be, I see growth. I see a large number of students who are no longer in the lowest category and who are moving up. Likewise, in the highest category, you can see students. There were 25 in the advanced category in the fall, and there were almost 60. There were 59 in the spring. That's what we'd like to see for all of our students, so that the task before us is to increase the movement to the right. And pleased to report that up to 260 students in the third grade, after 3 test administrations with 2 more to go, which I can touch on in a moment, we have 23 students waiting. So it's about a 92% success rate in avoiding retention. We want to see 100%. That's the goal. And we have 2 more opportunities for our students to achieve that, to attain the avoidance of retention and be assigned or promoted to 4th grade on the basis that they have proficiency in reading, which is what the 3rd grade guarantee in Ohio is supposed to assure.
Mr. Denny,
Yes, sir.
if you have the dates handy, mention them in case people are watching.
Oh, sure, I could definitely do that. We have 2 more administrations, but it's only for those 23 students involved. And the first one will be on July 8th and 7th. 7th, but then the OAA, there's a summer OAA that's the 9th. So it's that week right after the 4th of July. So students who need to continue to have support, we've got a lot of students in summer school now. Summer school ends on the 26th. Those students who continue to need support will continue on until the 10th of July to receive additional support. You've also got in your packet a copy of the spring OAA subscale analysis scores. We'd like to look at which pieces of the curriculum the kids tend to demonstrate competence in. Looks like this. It's a horizontally landscape document. And then what areas that they need more emphasis in and they need more support and help in. This is useful data going into next year and also improving the program that we have on site. And this is just an example of 3rd grade. This kind of analysis can be done with preliminary data that comes from the state in any subject area or grade level. But in reading, for example, you can see that actually our strongest point, the most students above band, which is above the grade level, is informational text. Whereas where we tend to need the most help is acquisition of vocabulary. So that's a piece that can be brought into how we plan and work with teachers and what teachers emphasize, and teaching children things like background knowledge and emphasizing that more before you launch into reading a particular selection or story can help kids out. So that's where this kind of thing can have some use. Gets a little more granular than just who passed and who didn't and what level were they when they passed or not. You can also see math as well. Just cursory scan of the data. Number sense is the most strengthened position or most strengthened subscale area in math in 3rd grade, and the one that it appears that we would need the most work in is probability, and I would say probably geometry. Spatial sense is close to that one. We have a few more pieces of information: pass rate by ethnicity, and also performance index by ethnicity. As you know, the state assigns values to students who take tests and what level they attain. You can be below basic, basic, proficient, accelerated, or advanced. Each one of those carries different point values. 3/10 of a point for a below basic, 6/10 of a point for basic, 1 full point for proficient, 1 1/10 points for accelerated, and 1 2/10 points for advanced. So if every child in the school scored advanced, you'd have a performance index of 120. So it scales that way. Minimum is 30, max is 120. Questions on 3rd grade from the information you have before you?
I'm just reacting emotionally to some of the data.
Understood. Hearing none, we're going to go to OGT, and we'll cover that. Dr. Holden, please feel free to chime in if you are so inclined. I have to own up to an error that I made. I actually am going to pass out preliminary 10th grade data. I switched 2 words, which turns out that's a big deal. You can't switch science and social studies. They mean different things. So I apologize, but this is the corrected version. All of the numbers are the same. I just had a heading incorrect. So this is 10th grade OGT for this spring. We have 249 students in 10th grade take the test. We're above 80% pass rate in 2 of those subjects, and that's writing and reading. Social studies is at 75%. I would remind the board that Ohio has chosen to elevate the standard for achieving an indicator. So it used to be if you got 75% of the students to pass, you would earn an indicator point. The state has raised that in grades 3 through 10 to 80%. So you can see that we have two areas in which we've made it, one in which we're close and would have made it under the old system, but would not make it this year. This is all preliminary, meaning the state has not applied its FAY rules and business rules to that. Students have to be continuously enrolled from count week in October all the way through testing week in March in order to count in the official accountability numbers. It's just a way to try to preserve mobility in the state and how that impacts different districts. Science is the subject area in which we would need to have the most support, with a 60% pass rate there, and a PI of 85. Writing is our highest with an 88% pass rate and a 93 performance index. Math is at a 69% pass rate, as you can see. Performance index 89.2. So this is the 10th grade as a whole. In my experience, these numbers go up anywhere between 0 and 5 percentage points, depending on student mobility and who moved in and who moved out, who was here to test that wasn't here the whole year, and so forth. And that happens all at the state level, where they make those determinations. Okay, I'll go ahead and pass out the next one. It's come up several times where we wanted to examine a very special program we have in our school, Academy of Global Studies. So I disaggregated the data just to look at AGS as well. So we'll pass that out. And by comparison, here is the non-AGS students who are not AGS or in the Academy of Global Studies. So I'll pass that out as well so you have an easy comparison. So you should have the whole group, and then you'll get a disaggregation of one of our schools within a school. And I'll wait until you have a chance to have both of those. And by all means, if you have questions as we go, please feel free to ask. Okay, you should have before you at this time preliminary 10th grade results for the Academy of Global Studies and also for the traditional program at the high school. So there were 75 students in the Academy sample this year and 173 in the traditional high school. And you can see the pass rates are substantially different. And so we're proud of the work that is happening there. One of the objectives of the program is, of course, to explore project-based learning and apply it in a full sense to see if it can be expanded to the entire school, which last year actually we had training for the whole staff on PDL, project-based learning. Very much in line with the Common Core standards and Ohio's new learning standards in science and social studies is a more rigorous way to teach kids and a more connected way to teach students. So we're pleased with the results so far. One of the things we did last year is also validate the growth of the students. So this is achievement, and it's very important to think of student learning in two different pots, if you will. One is achievement, the other is growth. So we saw last year that not only are students in AGS achieving well, they're actually growing. So they're predicted to hit a certain score, and we actually check and see, did they get the score or not? How close did they get? How many of the kids achieved that? So we'll do that again this year, but that data is not available until probably October or November. That's when it came out last year. So we'll have to wait a while on that. Bottom line grade on a report card. If AGS were its own school with its own district internal retrieval number, its own IRN, it would have gotten a grade of B for performance index and 101 PI, which is fairly high achieving.
Mr. Jennings, what's the highest PI you can check?
120. First in the state last year was 110, the highest in the state. What questions might you have?
I don't necessarily have a question, but I guess I have a statement. As a parent of a student who is not in AGS, it is quite disturbing that we can say that AGS students are achieving well and growing, but that we can't say that same thing about the rest of the student population. And AGS is a very small population of our high school, so I think the onus is on us to try to make that switch. We have to. You know, it's proud to be able to say that, but I think we're talking about less than 20% of our student population at the high school. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know it's a very small percentage. And to say that if it was a school by itself, you say that too many times and somebody will try to make that happen. And I don't think that that's our goal at all. So our goal more is to make sure that every student achieves and that we make that happen. Let's make that our goal. So that's more of a statement, not necessarily a question. And I think that we're all on the same page to try to make that happen, but I think it needs to be said.
You know, this was kind of an interesting, this may not be the right term used, but this was an interesting experiment in terms of expectations. In that when we opened AGS up, we said, we'll take anybody. You don't have to be an honors student. You just have to be willing to put the work in, and you have to commit to it. And we had the conversations with parents. You have to be able to commit to this. And that commitment, I think, is what's made the difference, I think. So the more we can do that, I guess we raised the expectation. Maybe another way to say it is we had a much higher expectation, and the students rose to that expectation. You know, I applaud the students and the staff that you know, they went out on the limb not knowing what the result would be. I think their gut said, hey, things will get better if we do this, but it's great now to have the data and to have this occur systemically throughout our system, not just at the high school, probably is imperative. You know, probably a better way to start AGS would have been in the lower grades and pushing it up. We're trying to push it down, which probably, that's what we've done. That may have not been the best plan. But
And I think now that is the plan. You're going back and trying to get the students prepared a little bit earlier. Because speaking from my own experience, and my son was in the 9th grade when the program started, and quite frankly, I didn't think he was academically prepared to take on the challenge. Even if I would have been, you know, one of those go-getter, and I feel like I am a go-getter mom, I just think that he wasn't academically prepared enough to sit through the rigor that it would have, you know, that would it was, you know, not a right decision for him. I mean, I think it was for a great number of students, but I just think that it goes without saying that those students are doing well, and I think that's great. I really do. I think that's fantastic. I think we also have to make sure that the rest of them do as well.
Dr. Johnson, whenever a school rolls out an initiative like this, it's risky. And so to take on the whole school would not have been a good idea.
Exactly.
Because it's too risky. Mr. Cleary called it an experiment. I call it an opportunity. And so some of the kids had a different opportunity. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we're whole and we make sure all of the kids have the same opportunity. Comparing AGS to the rest of the free world every day is not going to be good for us. So we have to make it right. There are students with disabilities in AGS that are doing exceptionally well. I know you made your decision for your child, but I hope that when we show the results and show the findings, that other parents will say it's about the commitment. We talk about the commitment of the student, but I think the teachers have a different attitude about it. When you have the teachers and the students with the same attitude about success, you get successful outcomes. So I think that's where Dr. Holden has been very courageous, creating the framework and moving her to the curriculum position. The director gives us a better idea of how to make it whole for every child, not just a conversation, because next year we can't have this conversation. It has to be something different.
I agree.
Okay.
Mr. Denny or Dr. Holden, Dr. Johnson had asked this, and I kind of have the same question, is this year we have a senior class, so we have 4 years of AGS students. What percentage of our high school population is AGS?
I was trying to add that in my head, Mr. Cleary. So I'd say probably 25%, maybe slightly. So probably 100 in grade 9. Maybe next year's 10th grade class, 80, 85, 75, and then the senior class, depending upon PSEO options.
Schools have been part of projects like this for years, but they were trying to put in a guarantee. And I know you heard what Mr. Cleary mentioned before. There were no preset conditions. There was no test, only a commitment to do something different. And I think a lot of that commitment came to the 7 o'clock in the morning instructional time. So for students who need remediation, who need other opportunities, that's one of the things that we're going to put in place to help grow that 7 o'clock opportunity for kids who need additional services. It's the commitment, but that commitment is going to be well worth it. So we'll see something different as we transition that way.
Given where this conversation is going, I feel a need to add on. I think you'll like what I'm about to say. This is the word commitment. The commitment was the only test for getting into AGS. It should not be, and I was part of pushing and rolling out and taking the leap with others for the AGS. But the commitment doesn't end there. You know, that commitment had a shape to it. It had 7 o'clock in the morning. It had the senior capstone project. It had the 4 years of foreign language. It had commitment to at least try international travel. I'm aware of students who are not in AGS who are equally committed to their learning, to their career. They and their parents viewed the student as having what I might call a different style, and they weren't ready for some of the teamwork. They're individual learners and do best sort of in a more solo mode than AGS will support and tolerate. So there are students who are very committed to their own growth and so forth, and we shouldn't use the word commitment only to the 25% of those that are in that program. Okay, end of sermonette.
I just think we have a responsibility from my part to be transparent. This program's been in existence for now 3 years. We would be remiss if we didn't share with the public and with the board what the outcomes are, and if they weren't positive, we should stop the program. I mean, that's just looking at the data that you have before you and using it correctly. So I think it's good dialogue. I think we have to talk about it. And the goal is to expand high achievement to all kids. That's what our community and our kids deserve.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Dean.
Mr. Denny.
You know, I guess I have one final comment, or someone else may want to chime in, but it's probably appropriate to say thank you to the staff overall, not just the AGS staff, because they're blips on the radar throughout all of this data that says the trajectory is going in the right direction. While it may not have been as large as what we had hoped, we're seeing it move in the right direction. So I applaud all the staff for all their extra work and hard work. This past year was a lot of transition was occurring. So thank you to the staff. 8.04, student athletes and transition for higher GPA.
Yes, sir. I kind of heard from parents. I didn't hear from parents really, but I kind of dreamed that I heard from parents that were crying in their sleep saying that the superintendent's going to raise a GPA and my child won't get a chance to participate. All right. So my findings say that that's not accurate. So in grades 10, 11, 12, there are 220 potential athletes. And when we looked at the range of students that would participate along with their GPA, out of 221, there would only be 7 kids who are not eligible to participate in athletics, which is totally different than what I heard before. So we're excited. So what we did is we decided to push a little bit harder with the athletic director. The athletic director in our district has to be not just athletics, but academics as well. Those two go together. So Mr. Campbell couldn't be here tonight, but he's proposed a letter that's going to go to all the student athletes, and this is how it reads. We're extremely pleased that you're making a commitment to participate in extracurricular activities for the 2014-15 school year. We're excited that you've been conscientious about your grades. We also know that you'll be taking critical college entrance tests like the ACT. We're providing you with timely information that will help you prepare for your transition to a great collegiate experience. Your current high school unweighted grade point average is, according to the National Collegiate Athletic Association NCAA Clearinghouse, if you're planning to pursue opportunities to participate in college athletics, here's the ACT score you would have to obtain in order to meet the clearinghouse requirements. Please note, this is the sum of the scores of the following 4 subjects on the ACT: English, Math, Reading, and Science, not just the ACT composite score that is often reported. Additional information about NCAA opportunities for Division I and Division II colleges can be found at the eligibilitycenter.org. Also, an ACT prep course will be offered at the high school next year to assist you in being successful on this important test. If you're interested in this course, please contact your guidance counselor. It is critical that you monitor your GPA, make very good grades, and prepare to take the ACT more than once in the near future. Please be assured we're monitoring your progress very closely with a clear focus on your present and future success. It takes a great deal on your part to be a responsible student athlete. Please let me know if you need additional assistance with any of the aforementioned information. Again, thank you for making the commitment to Winton Woods City School. Sincerely, Dwight Campbell. This is something that doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen because people leave it up to children to figure out their own way. The athletic director is making a commitment to saying, we will show you how to get to that part. Having the pleasure of going to the academic signing for fall sports this year, having the pleasure of meeting Coach Parker, and there were 5 young men that were going on to participate in collegiate athletics at no cost to their families. When he mentioned that there were 5, and he asked me, and I asked the question, how many should be at the table, and he said 15, that told me we needed to do something different. So here's the opportunity. Every student that's participating in athletics will receive this letter with their unweighted GPA, as well as what their ACT score needs to be. We will no longer wait for the NCAA clearinghouse to clear our kids' senior year. Kids can be cleared junior year, and then they can become more, they can have more options along the way. So we are just kind of becoming more progressive and more proactive with all of our students.
Board, any questions, comments? Attaboys? Attaboy. Okay.
Nothing like data.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's good. Superintendent recommendations 9.0.
Recommendation to approve personnel schedules A, B, C, D, E, M, and for June 23rd, 2014, as presented.
Board, we need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the various personnel schedules as just outlined by the superintendent.
A second.
Any discussion, comments on any of those items? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 9.02, salary schedule for certified administrators.
Recommendation, Mr. Vice President, is to have the board approve the salary schedule and placement for administrators as presented.
Board, we need a motion.
A motion to accept the salary schedule as presented by the superintendent.
I will second that. And I, if I may, applaud the superintendent for identifying a range and personalizing the changes from time to time
Thank you.
based upon a range rather than a more mindless series of boxes and steps.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 9.03, classified administrators.
Recommendation is to approve the salary schedule and placement for classified administrators as presented, effective August 1st, 2014.
Board, we need a motion.
A motion that we accept the classified administrator's schedule, salary schedule as presented by the superintendent.
I'll second.
Any discussion or comments?
I'd just like to add my compliment to this schedule as well.
Any other ones? Bless you.
Thank you.
Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 9.04, benefits for certified and classified administrators.
The recommendation, Vice President, is to approve as presented the changes in benefits for all certificated and classified administrators. Changes include pickup of 6% of the employee's share of the retirement contributions and the elimination of retirement incentive for all administrators.
Board, we need a motion?
I'll motion to approve the benefits for certificated and, oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Certificated and classified administrators. It was 9.04, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I second.
Go ahead. Put her name down.
Any discussion or comments? I just have one. Thank you to the administrators that went 3 years or 4 years with a pay freeze. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments?
Could I add one comment?
Yes.
The administrators have also taken a pay freeze for the coming year in support of your awarding them 6% of their pickup. Their placement on the salary schedule stays the same
Right where
as
it
it
is.
has for the last 3 years.
Thank you for
Just a
adding that.
comment.
Yes. So thank you to the staff.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 9.05, job description, English as a second language ESL tutor.
And before I ask for the approval of the board, I would like to read the general description of the job. The ESL tutors will plan and implement tutoring sessions for learners in ESL program. In a one-on-one or small group setting, ESL tutors will help students improve skills in speaking, reading, writing, and understanding English. Learning sessions are student-driven, focusing on the needs and goals of the students. If we are moving our district more to a model of PBL, then when they're in group settings, they will have to know how to interact with their peers. So this falls right in line of what our recommendations are. You know, we could say something very cavalier about how we're going to get our kids ready. This one really talks about how to get them ready in order so that they can interact with their peers appropriately. So the recommendations to approve the job description, English as a second language, ESL tutors, as presented.
Board, we need a motion?
May I ask a question before I motion?
Yes.
Has this not been happening currently, or is this just something the ESL teachers have been doing?
Well, I think there are two parts. Number one, there was some reductions in services, and so having the ESL tutors where they're needed is going to be education. Early identification really helps as opposed to a kid struggling for many, many weeks. So the early identification and having the ESL tutors on board early makes a big difference as opposed to waiting until the kids are already in trouble.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll move to approve the job description, ESL tutor, English as a second language, as presented by the superintendent.
I'll second it.
Any
Have
other
a comment?
comments?
Yeah, there was a phrase in the job description that caught my eye, Mr. Superintendent, and that has to do, I don't know geographically where it is on the page, but it says it attends PTA meetings, open houses, conferences, and other school-related events. Is that a new?
I don't know what the
Requirement.
other classification mentioned, but when this description was being drafted, in order to get the families really engaged in what we offer, we thought that it was going to be very appropriate for the ESL tutor to be part of that conversation. And so we talk about the whole child, but then we leave part of the child out. These meetings are very, very important so parents can be well informed about our next generation of learning.
Well, that's where I was going with my question. I don't remember seeing that many staff at
Commitment.
PTAs, other school-related events.
Right.
And other school-related events include sports events that I can count on a few fingers the number of staff that I see at events that are not required to be there because of their coaching or supervisory responsibility. So I would hope to see the tutor and related staff at a more,
Multiple events.
a wider variety of student activities to have the benefit that you just mentioned.
Because what we're doing is we're not just coaching the kids through, we're developing relationships.
So if it's not a new paragraph, a new sentence. I hope it's a new emphasis. I don't know how the pay works for attending all these things, but let's teach the whole child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this one is written in the job description though, so you will definitely see this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I have noticed at our last 3 community events that we've had, and it's something that just hasn't been on, I don't think of it, but we've had an interpreter there. And there's always been, and I go out of my way to recognize, to look and see how many people are with our interpreter. And I'm always surprised that there's so many with it, that it is an area that apparently we've been lacking in. And now I've seen the evidence where before I didn't know if it existed, but apparently it does. Board, we need a motion? We got a motion, okay.
There's a motion on us. Yeah, we're ready to vote.
We did have a second?
ready to vote.
You did you second? Okay,
she made the motion, I second.
okay,
Mrs. Miranda, Dr. Johnson, second.
okay.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 9.06, board policy regarding 3rd grade reading guarantee.
Yeah, policy 2623.02. The purpose of this memo is to inform the Board of District's year-long communication with parents regarding Ohio's 3rd grade guarantee. This is pursuant to Board's policy 2623.02 and Ohio Revised Code, and there are like 47 other numbers to go along with that. I can read them all if you choose to have me read them, Mr. Cleary.
That's not necessary. Board,
All right.
it was in your packets, so.
Okay. We've decided, and Dr. Holden has been very courageous in this work with working with Mr. Dorsey and also Mr. Denny. Mr. Dorsey kind of lands in the hot seat. I mean, he's the principal of the 3rd grade, and I'm sure he takes that job seriously, and he wouldn't want any other grade band other than 3rd grade. Correct, Mr. Dorsey? Okay, all right. So Mr. Dorsey is going to give you just a version of how much communication has gone into our plan to let our parents know how well our kids are doing and what the challenges are along the way. Principal Dorsey.
Good evening, board members. Mr. Smith. The 3rd grade guarantee, of course, is a new initiative that, though it did start last year, there were requirements that were at a much higher level this year. So we really had to make sure that we communicated throughout the year. The beginning of the year started with communicating diagnostic data to parents. And a lot of this is written in the code and in the plan for 3rd grade reading guarantee. Students that are not on track to meet the requirements have to have what's called a reading intervention and monitoring plan. So we have to kind of share with parents what exactly are we going to do along the way to help them meet their needs. And throughout the year, as Mr. Denny mentioned, there are multiple times where students can test to determine if they're going to be retained based upon the 3rd grade reading guarantee. They have fall OAA. We gave the Terra Nova, which is an equivalent test that is allowed to be given, which can allow students to not be retained because of the guarantee. So we gave that in, April. We also gave the spring OAA, and as Mr. Denny mentioned, we went from over 100 students down to about 23 at this point, and there will be 2 more administrations along the way. You know, I've sent letters as each administration is given. We also send out data reports throughout the year to keep parents aware of their children's progress so that they know exactly where their children are, what lexile are they reading at, and things like that, so that they can support at home, because we need that support. There's many facets to the 3rd grade guarantee, like mid-year retention, which is part of the new language that has to change, that we have to look at. Districts are required to have a mid-year retention policy, so we have worked to kind of draft a mid-year retention policy, which helps us to determine if a child actually next year, like they've been held back this year, they didn't make it. At the beginning of next year, when they take the fall OAA, if they then make the required score, there has to be a plan in place to allow them to possibly move to 4th grade before the end of the year. And so there's more language in the new policy regarding that. Any other questions?
Board, any questions?
I do have a question with regards to the students who, you said there's like 23 now that you're working with. They're currently in summer school?
Yes.
Is this summer school every day, half a day?
It is. It's about, let's see, I think about 3 hours. We focus the students that, we have more than just the students that are, retention folks, but we really focus on, we have some folks from Miami University that come and they do a clinic, a reading clinic with our young people. So many of them have one-on-one or one-on-three kind of situations in summer school, so that hopefully they're getting really powerful instruction. And we've got some great teachers there of our own as well to kind of support, because there's a 2 sections in summer school. So the Miami folks are there in the first section. The second section, they'll have a little bit of time with our folks, and then basically they'll test again. Those 23 students will test again, and they'll have multiple opportunities to hopefully cross that line so they can go on to grade 4.
The recommendations to approve revised policy 2623.02, 3rd grade reading guarantee. Mr. Dorsey, you can come back up to the podium for your next piece.
Board, need a motion?
I'd like to recommend the 3rd grade reading guarantee, as stated by the superintendent.
Second.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. Mr. Superintendent?
Yes. 9.07. There's something different about our code of conduct, and Principal Dorsey was on the team that led that charge. One of the things that, if you notice, certain work sessions, I gave you information without students' name, but some of the infractions, and some of those things were just multiple infractions. One of the things that we are teaching our children now with PBIS is we're talking about reflective activities and restitution. Because at any point in time, we're going to have to teach our children how to be self-monitors of their own behavior. And I think that creates a better holistic approach to what we're trying to do. Where students get in trouble, they have consequences, but in some cases it was the same kid doing it over and over again. They received the consequence, but there was no action in place to help remedy the issues. So Mr. Dorsey and his team put some special time, and I'm going to read some of the corrective action pieces for Category 1. Of course, parent contact, there's an apology, loss of privileges, detention, reteach behavioral expectations. Those are not usually included in the process. And then there is a restitution, reflective activity, and of course the timeout. The reflective activities and also the reteach behavioral expectations are things that really govern our work, so that students now are becoming more responsible as opposed to doing the same things over and over again. So thank you for that work, Principal Dorsey. Anything else you want to add to it?
I just wanted to make sure that you all were well aware of just kind of the changes. I mean, I'm very proud of the work of the team, and I certainly thank the members of my team who've just really worked together to really improve this document. There's a couple of pieces that I want to make sure you're well aware of. We've not had, as a district, kind of a K-12 positive behavior focus. And so now it is aligned to be respectful, be responsible, be safe. Each school would kind of have different ones. Some would have be respectful, be a problem solver, be reliable. So now it will be aligned K-12. And as Mr. Smith said, there are many more proactive measures that are mentioned in here, even before consequences happen, so that there's a lot more discussion about that, and even more language to help encourage parents to get involved early and to intervene early. And as Mr. Smith mentioned, our current code of conduct was not tiered.
So that was probably the biggest change here, is that we took the infractions and actually tiered them. So category 1 is for kind of teacher level, staff level, minor incidences. Category 2 is more serious, possibly administrative, depending on the level of the behavior. And category 3 are things that could be very high level that could possibly end in a recommendation for expulsion. We've not had that before, K-12, and so there are just some really positive changes here that I'm very excited about.
Could I repeat back to you what I think that I'm hearing you say?
Sure.
This is a little third grade boy that understands that, gee, if I fight, I might get 3 days off school. So maybe he's done that and he's had his 3 days off school. In lieu of doing the 3 days off school, what you're doing is you're working with him to change the behavior so the outcome is still good at the end of the day. So they'd still test well, they're not out of school.
Absolutely.
And we've got to
How do
see the
you
big
do
picture.
that so little Johnny doesn't become disruptive to everyone else in the class?
Well, in our district, we've certainly worked on several different aspects when we've implemented things like ASA and alternate discipline placements. But really, even if we use those kind of tools, making those stronger, having character ed kind of things in there, more support. And the other piece is working up front. I think that's probably the bigger piece of this, is having an aligned set of classroom and building procedures around be respectful, be responsible, be safe, so that that's kind of taught up front. That's actually the work of the team, is to do the positive behavior interventions and supports. And how do we help our young people know what's expected? How do we remind them throughout the year to support them through that? Ultimately, sometimes there are consequences, and all those things that are traditional things like suspension and things like that are listed here. But our hope is that there is a wider range of possible consequences so that we can see the big picture, so that kids can be in class as much as possible. We need them in class so that they can learn.
In addition to that, I think the other thing that the team worked on, and they were very courageous with it, I think we need to give our parents some information up front that when your child is out for 5 days, those are 5 instructional days. And the state is not going to change the timeline. They still will be tested at the right appropriate time. There's not a 5-day delay. So getting Johnny or Tim to be appropriate and do the right thing in school would just be to our advantage, because he's there and he's in attendance and he is not disrupting other kids.
I realized that was a lot of work, what you just went through. Because before, just doing something prescriptive was very easy. You fight, you're out 3 days.
Yeah.
But there was no common sense within that. It was, our hands as the board were somewhat tied in that we just want to point back to the policy. It says you do X, well then X is the consequence.
Right.
So common sense.
And I think to have those set
Prevailing
of
here.
expectations will help, because our current code, it was just this big list. And it wasn't parent-friendly, it wasn't student-friendly. Several schools wrote student-friendly versions of our code. And so we really worked to try to have a code that a parent can look through, that students can look through, and be able to reference.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that what you're saying, Tim. When you all set it up with the corrective action steps, I like the idea that you set it up in categories.
Yeah.
And so you kind of set it up so that then the punishment would, so to speak, fit the crime.
Right.
And that it leaves all of the other subjectives, conjecture out of it. You know, it doesn't matter what I look like or who I am. If I did this, you fall in category 1.
Exactly.
If you did this, you fall in category 2 or 3, and then that is the punishment that goes along with it. And take that
Absolutely.
subjectivity out of it, so that it's not personality driven.
Right.
You know, I like him more, and he did this, and you know, but you did number 1, you were in this category. You know, so I like the idea of that, and I think that that will help with the PBIS being implemented.
Absolutely.
And people being able to understand, you know, like the parents, from the parent perspective, being able to understand, when I get this, I sign off. You're going to have parents sign off on this as
Yes.
a part of the structure for the beginning of the school year.
Yes.
Every parent throughout the whole district.
And we continue, that's been a common practice, kind of in those first day packets, that they get a code of conduct sign off.
So, absolutely. And the fact that this is K-12.
Right,
So
that's
that
what I'm
a Category 1 is still just as true at the high school as it is in primary South. And, you know, consequences may look different, but that notion will be important.
So, Mr. Dorsey, you had representatives from all the buildings as part of your team?
Yes, yes. We were very administrative heavy. The team that was assigned to us, we actually only have one teacher. So when we did, the central office staff allowed us to have a work session, and so we invited teachers from every building so that we really had a good, strong representation to do the work.
Well, we've talked about, is it student-friendly, is it parent-friendly? My question is it administrator-friendly? And I asked the question seriously because the feedback I've heard that's been troubling, and it's been persistent over years, as my child moves from building to building. It's the same code of conduct, but it's a different world. There's some sort of different interpretation at building A versus building B versus building C. And of course, our students only stay in a building for 2 years unless it's the high school or the 2 elementaries. But where do you think we are in terms of common understanding, common buy-in to the revisions, the improved version?
I certainly feel like that there's enough wiggle room here, I think, for a high school versus even a primary South or what have you, but the fact that we're now defining, I think, in essence, is helping. This process in and of itself will help some of those issues that we've had with the inconsistency, K-12. I think this will actually help because now we'll have what's a Tier 1, what's a Tier 2, and administrators will kind of have a list of ideas for a Category 2 offense versus a Category 3. So I think that in and of itself, it doesn't feel limiting to me as an administrator, and most of our, a lot of our team, of course, was administration. But there's enough wiggle room there that we can meet the needs, the individual needs of kids, but also make sure our kids stay safe. Does that make sense?
One of the other things, Mr. Pinkup, sometimes showing the outline to a parent makes a difference. And so our parent-friendly person was our own Miss Wilson, who made a decision to not only put the categories here, but to make sure they were alphabetically listed. The alphabetical listing, if you want to find out what happens in Category 3, and it's something that starts with an S, you find S and it tells you where to go, as opposed to parents scrambling all over the place looking for it. So thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you.
(9.08) student uniform policy.
The uniform policy is the same as it was before, but I think that our work is to enforce it and make it real as opposed to something that's on paper. So the recommendation is to approve the uniform policy as presented, but the policy for 14-15 reads this way. The Winton City School Board of Education believes that a neat and orderly appearance is a positive factor for school safety and success. In keeping with that belief, the following approved uniform policy shall be adhered to by all students in Winton City Schools. The expectation is that students will dress in a manner that reflects positively on the student, school, and district and at all school-related activities. So the it's permitted attire for K-12. Not quite sure how that's been dealt with in the past, but the future moving forward, there's a uniform policy and the kids will have to adhere to it. It just goes just that way. I know that sounds kind of straightforward, but that's what it is.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, with pleasure, I move to adopt that.
Thank you.
I don't believe we had a motion and a second for the code of conduct.
We did.
If you would like to do that one first.
Yes.
A motion to reapprove our current policy. We need a motion for that.
No. Are you saying we're still on the previous topic?
Conduct.
Which one? Uniform policy?
9.07.
Sorry, I'm going too fast.
9.07.
Sorry, we need a motion for 9.07.
If you're going to approve the code of conduct.
Board, we need a motion for 9.07.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour.
I'll motion to approve the revised code of conduct as presented.
I second.
Okay. Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye.
Now we can do the uniform school.
Sorry, we went right to discussion before. Sorry about that. 9.08, we need a motion to approve the student uniform policy.
With pleasure, I will move to readopt the uniform policy.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 9.09, textbook adoption.
Recommendations to approve the proposed textbooks as presented. One other item, Mr. Cleary and Board, the textbook opportunities are going to be different in the future. We have a strong curriculum department, and that strong curriculum department will present texts and let you know where we are as it relates to. It has to have all of the major factors in it. It has to have Common Core. It has to have high yield strategies. It may have to have pieces of RTI and PSYOP so that the board knows exactly what they're looking at. Giving textbooks to the board to say approve and look at it at your leisure, I don't think it's very appropriate. And so we're going to become more assertive about our work and more responsible, where the curriculum department really does have a good eye of great instruction, especially led by Dr. Holden. So this will be our common thing in the future, that we present information to you based on our findings, that these books hold all the evidence that we're helping our kids move through so that they can meet the state standards.
Are
Thank
you
you.
saying you're not going to ask the board for approval?
Absolutely, we are going to ask the board, but we're going to present you with the information, and then you take the books home and read them in the middle of the night, whatever the board does with the books.
Yes, okay.
I like to say that I do appreciate the fact that that is going to happen. As a professor myself, I wouldn't want someone to come in and say, not this book, but that book, and them not really know the topic. And I think if you have someone over curriculum and instruction, that's the person that should be determining
Absolutely.
that the books are adequate to meet the goals of the standards, whether there's, the state standards, the, Common Core, or, and we shouldn't even be looking at books that don't march us down that road or on that path. So, I did my homework, I looked at all these books, but at the same time, I'm looking like, it looks fine to me. I don't know that, I think that it's better that somebody who is hired to know those things and to talk to those teachers who are going to be teaching those courses and saying, this is the standard we need to meet, this is the path we need to go, and so this is the book that will get us there. And then we can still look at the books, but, I appreciate that is the new path that we're taking.
So the recommendation is to approve the proposed textbooks as presented.
Need a motion, board?
I'll motion that we accept the proposed textbook adoption for the 2014-2015 as stated by the superintendent.
Second.
Any other discussion?
There are at least two books in that set that Mr. Willard unknowingly expressed an interest in those.
Yes.
History books.
Magruder's been out for a while.
There's a secret, and the board has never done this, but there's a secret when you go to the board website and you click on all of our codes and bylaws. There's a portion in there called forms, and in the forms section, there's actually a vetting procedure for textbooks. So as we continue to change, it would be nice to update that document as to how we do that. So when Mr. Willard asks how does that process work, we could point them to that form or document or process. Like I said, it's a secret.
Should be.
Minutia.
There's only like 9 forms in there, but that happens to be one of them.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Okay, Mr.
It's a
Seymour.
secret no longer.
Yeah.
If there's no other comments.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. 9.10, bus bids.
Yes, we're requesting your favorable consideration and approval of the following bus bids: 2 72-passenger bus route buses from Rush Bus Centers at $81,500 each, and 1 54-passenger special needs bus from Rush Bus Center at $83,975. And the total cost of bus purchasing for this coming fiscal year is $246,975.
Board, we need a motion.
I move to adopt the bus bid proposals as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. Mr. Smith or Mr. Denny, does that put us on schedule? Or are we still behind on retiring buses and updating our buses? I'm sorry, I should have done that before we voted, but
It's closer. I was actually just running some calculations on the fleet. I've got it on my phone. It's just technology is kind of a cool thing. We would now have 47 buses, and this would put us at an average of 9.41 years per bus, with our sub-fleet being about 16 years old on average, and there's 11 of those, and 36 frontline buses at an average age of about 7 years each. That's important because the state average is 9.42 years. So we actually just reached the state average last year. This should put us ahead of, well, close to back on track. We had gotten about 4 or 5 years behind.
So
okay.
maybe I over-answered that, but
No, perfect.
Okay.
Board, any other questions for Mr. Denny?
I was just going to mention that I do think it's important to read the next paragraph in the memo, if I may. The recommended bus bid awards listed above represent the lowest, most responsible bids and are based on adjusting the base bid price listed on the additional bid tabulation sheet for each bus by adding or deducting included options based on the bid responses. So in this way, it's an apples to apples. I
absolutely.
think that's important.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. 10.0 Board of Education reports. Mr. Pennicuick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you take one and pass it down? Board, a major analysis of school funding was released this afternoon. Analysis was done by a man named Howard Fleeter, who is the preeminent economist and veteran school funding analyst in the state of Ohio. And I want to read to you just a little bit because it gives you a flavor of the environment into which we will go when we go for the bond levy in November. So I will get to the handwritten data in just a minute. I apologize for it being handwritten, but I had to transcribe it today in order to have just the Hamilton County sites for tonight. I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from last Sunday's Columbus Dispatch. The Dispatch and the Akron Beacon Journal got advanced copies of this analysis, and this is the best summary of what we're going to talk about here in a minute. It says, Ohio homeowners and farmers are paying more in property taxes these days, but not just because schools have been asking for more money. Policy changes over the years that have reduced the property taxes paid by Ohio businesses might give the state a friendlier tax code for employers. But the series of revisions has had another effect, a dramatic shift in who is paying the local taxes that funds Ohio schools, and it's going to get worse, the Dispatch says. For example, in 1991, this analysis was over almost a 40-year period. In 1991, Ohio homeowners and farmers, known as Class 1 property, paid 47.5% of the nearly $4.4 billion in property taxes to schools, while businesses picked up the rest. A new analysis shows that 20 years later, in 2011, those homeowners and farmers now are paying 70% of the school property taxes. While housing developments and rising farmland values over the 20-year span made some contribution to landowners paying more of the total property tax bill, the real impact came from changes in the State House. Over the period, particularly starting in 2005, lawmakers significantly reduced property taxes on utilities and eliminated the tangible personal property tax that businesses paid on inventory and equipment. So where the business tangible property tax paid 19% of the school tax burden in 1991, I'm sorry. 20 years later, that share was 0. Public utilities paid 13% of the burden in 1991, but less than 6% in 2011. And the analyst said we eliminated a huge chunk of our tax base. Business and commercial property is still taxed, accounting for more than 24% of all school property taxes in 2011, a 4 percentage point increase since 1991. But overall, businesses are paying less money into the property tax burden than they had in the past. Now, colleagues, if you look at the paper and find the Winton Woods number, it has a little asterisk about a third of the way down the page. What this is saying, under the column called 1991, in that year, the local property taxpayers were paying, I mean, we all pay the tax, some of it just goes to the state and some of it goes directly to the school, but this is the share that local voters can vote on. They don't get a direct vote. Our representatives in Columbus do. So in 91, we were paying 56.5%. That's now up to 69, almost 70%, a 13% increase. So when voters locally say, I'm paying more, they're right. Okay. By the way, we're up to almost 70%. When I first started on the board, our share locally was 40%. Now it's up to 70% as the state has pulled back their funding and pulled back other funding in order to make the state a more business-friendly environment. I thought it'd be interesting just to highlight a couple more if your eyes would trail down to the dot, the Princeton line. In 91, Princeton homeowners were paying only 19%, the rest coming from businesses. A district like Princeton with all the manufacturing and the shopping centers and so forth, the individual homeowners could skate. They loved it. They don't love it quite so much now as their share has jumped up to 37.5%. So the increase there is 18.5%. And if you look down at Laughlin, small district, but it's very, very dramatic. 20 years ago, they were only paying 7% of their school tax. All the rest was coming from GE and Ford and business along the way. So as those business taxes were phased out, their share jumped 33%, from 7% all the way up to 40%. So they are now feeling pain that they haven't felt in the previous decades. That's all I'm going to say about it. If you're interested in the full editorial, I'll make copies for you, but I wanted you to see the environment into which we march with any levy. And of course, the bond levy is first up. Mr. Chair, that would conclude my report for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Pennycuff. Great Oaks Career Center, the summertime, usually there's not much happening. Dr. White has retired. Her last day will be June the 30th. Big items that are going on with Great Oaks right now are policy changes and policy reviews, their own version of Neola. There was one kind of unusual item that came up, and I've mentioned it to Mr. Smith, and it's something that probably affects us in one way or another, and that's a e-cigarette policy. That some of the e-cigarettes are non-tobacco, so how do we handle that? So maybe in our next Neola update for our smoking policy, there might be a language change in there, but the Oaks is being a little bit proactive in that area because it's not clear where that fell. So with that, there are no other reports. 10.03 is not in here, but are there any other Board of Education reports? Okay, seeing none. Board motions and recommendations? Mr.
What about 11?
Oh, 11? Yeah, board motions and recommendations.
Oh, sorry.
Resolution requesting alternative license board in your packet. There is a resolution to renew Mr. Smith's alternative license. Mr. Smith, could you tell us kind of where we are on that, on permanent license, just so the board understands?
Yeah, there'll be another two-year license, and then after the 2 year, there are two-year license, which are, they're called, yes, sorry. And then after the next 2 year, there will be a 5-year permanent. So with the work that's been done with Marison and transferring my license over from Cincinnati, that's where the process takes place. This probably should have happened when, Ms. Wilson?
Well, this is the appropriate time, so he's renewing his first 2-year license. We renew it once. So he's going into his second 2-year alternative license, but now it'll be issued by Winton Woods instead of
Cincinnati Public.
CPS.
Okay.
At the end of the 2 years, he'll get a 5-year professional license.
Okay.
Issued by or applied for by?
Applied for, thank you, but
Yeah.
it's, the resolution, it's similar to how I got my alternative license, was via a year. It's a series of 2 years. The board has to request the license, and then the ODE will grant it. He's already paid for it.
Board, any other questions on that item? Seeing none, we need a motion.
I'll move to approve, I'm sorry. I'll move to approve the resolution requesting alternative license as presented.
I'll second.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. Yeah, I don't know what number that is.
Yes, we just did it right.
I printed my
We did it in the
agenda.
wrong order, no problem.
Yes, okay.
So if you would pass it now.
All right.
Board, I'm going to make the motion that's coming your way. Make sure Mr. Seymour gets it.
I apologize, I printed my agenda, and my agenda did not have this item, but it is in the electronic version.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I move to rename the Winton Woods High School Auditorium as the Dave Bell Performing Arts Center in honor of Mr. Bell, his legacy of excellence, and his service to our students and communities.
Board, we need a motion,
Need a second?
or a second? Or no? Yes, we need a second.
I'll second.
Well, I'd like to offer discussion. While I'm not opposed to the auditorium being named the Dave Bell Performing Arts Center, I think that the way that it happened preceded how it should have happened, and that the boosters did it before we were allowed to, vote on it. So I think that we have calls now to look at how our buildings and our to relook at the policy on how this goes from here on out as far as naming of our facilities. I think we have a policy. I think it's not very clearly defined, and we need to do that. I think Mr. Bell was a wonderful instructor, and my girls all really loved him. But I think that the way this happened was not, did not go in the right way, so.
I agree.
Yes. I think all the booster groups, this doesn't happen very often. Maybe it happens every 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. The booster groups thought they were doing the right thing when they did this, but they all know that they didn't follow the right procedure. So hopefully it will not happen again. It'll probably be a completely different booster group 5 years from now when some other
Exactly. You
opportunity
can't count on
pops
that.
up. But
Yeah, that's right. So,
we have a motion and a second. Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Nay.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
Aye. Comments from members of the Board of Education, if any?
Yes, I have one, or maybe two. I wanted to touch back on what Mr. Pennicuick said earlier regarding the bullet point in the ESL tutor's job description regarding attending PTA and events and things of that nature. This has been simmering since we discussed that. Perhaps I'd like to I don't know if recommend is the correct word, that may be too strong for this type of a setting, but if that's going to be built into a job description, and this specific person is the ESL tutor, it is a great opportunity that lies before this specific person or people to attend PTA meetings and gain inclusion from our almost, what is it, Mr. Denny, 30%, 25% Hispanic population in the district?
That's probably around 15.
15 or 17?
Yeah.
Okay, because as of now, as I am on the PTA board as well, we have not had inclusion of Latino families. So if this is going to be built into their job description, this may be a perfect opportunity for us to garner some support in that area of inclusion. That's all I have.
Any other comments from the board? Comments from the superintendent? None? Comments to the board from the association? Seeing none. There is a need for an executive session this evening, so we need a motion to go in executive session to hear an employee grievance.
I'll motion to go into closed session.
I'll second.
Mr. Seymour?
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye.
Mr. Pennicuick?
Aye.
Mr. Cleary?
That's it. Thank you.